Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Wednesday. To think about that. It's hump day. And my hair translated much better in the mirror than it does on video, so I'm a little disappointed. But anyways, we're going to build some more today. Good morning, Muddy. We're building some more today on cognitive distortions. This is day 2. Yesterday, we did some common cognitive distortions of catastrophizing, mind reading, negative focus, control fallacy, personalization, owning the truth, should thinking, emotional reasoning, overgeneralizing, labeling, just world thinking, and fortune telling. So today, we're going to go over I'm going to just read this from my computer because it was a lot to write. The 10 most common cognitive distortions and how to challenge them. But before I start, I just wanted to clarify because on Monday, I did a show and I was talking about, how sometimes people weaponize the Bible and all these things. And I did my best to clarify that I meant the real kind of radicalized religious people, and I'm not just pointing in one direction. I mean, every religion has its radicals, okay? And I realized, as my cousin and I were talking, and she was like, wait a minute, but I really tried to make that distinction. And I do have Sammy on here, so I feel like if I overstepped, she would have reeled me back in. But no, I wasn't talking about the Christians that live the way that I believe God or Jesus would have wanted them to live. I'm talking about the ones that take the scripture and weaponize it for their own beliefs, for their own justifications of their behaviors. So, like I said, I believe God is an all-loving God, and that some of these people who take people and just whack people, are not literally, but proverbially with their Bibles are the ones that they ignorant people. So I guess I'm just prejudiced against ignorant people. so anyways, yeah, I wanted to make that distinction because I do apologize if I offended anyone. I realize that sometimes when people watch this later, they kind of just skim over it or don't totally listen, and I have to take that into consideration as well. So I just wanted to make that distinction because, like I said, I believe in God. I am a polytheist, which means I have a lot of different belief systems, but, so anyways, I don't know, Sammy, how did that sound? That sound good, Muddy? So anyways, that's my clarification, and that is my apology, and I do apologize. And, if you were one of those people that were offended by what I said, for the main fact that I called you out on it, then that's not my problem. But if you're a good, kind human being, period, and you don't weaponize the Bible for your own justifications of your own hatred, then you're cool with me. We're aces. So, not like you care, because I'm just me. But anyways, let's get to this. The 10 most common cognitive distortions and how to challenge them. Our minds are powerful tools, but sometimes they play tricks on us. Cognitive distortions, patterns of thinking that are inaccurate, biased, or otherwise unhelpful, can significantly impact our mood, relationships, and overall quality of life. Recognizing these thought patterns is the first step towards challenging and changing them. Here are the 10 most common cognitive distortions and strategies to overcome them. So, okay, thank you, Muddy. I appreciate that. Good morning, older sibling. So I'm going to read through these, and then we'll go back through and we'll talk about the distortion and how to challenge it, okay? So the first one is all or nothing thinking. This is one of the things that we talked about early on last month in recognizing cognitive distortions. Overgeneralization, we had that yesterday. Mental filtering, discounting the positive, that was also one of the things yesterday. Jumping to conclusions, magnification and minimization, emotional reasoning, should statements, labeling, and personalization and blame. So some of these do kind of run into yesterday's, and I think really most of them do. They're just relabeled and reworded. So if I trip over some of my words, I think I bit the back of my tongue yesterday or while I was sleeping because it feels kind of poofy back there. So one of the other reasons why I was tripping over my words yesterday. I mean, how do you not know how to say remarkable? But anyways, that's just me. Sometimes that happens. But anyways, all or nothing thinking, the distortion, seeing situations in black and white terms without acknowledging the middle ground. If something isn't perfect, it's considered a complete failure. So, that is a big cognitive distortion. I can see why it's number one, because some people do that. There's no gray area. Everything, it's either black or white. And sometimes it's, the people that go for perfection, that is sometimes an issue for them. But, it's also for people who are very controlling, right? Who have to control everything, whether it's something you do or something, they want you to do. It's just, they're challenging you without really giving you an opportunity. So, and if it's not perfect, it can lead to bad things. Now, this could, stem from trauma, and it could stem from, your, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know what is wrong with my brain today. It could stem from trauma, or it can stem from, just, upbringing. It could be a generational thing. Or it could just be that maybe you had whoever, like a parent may have had trauma. And so if they never had it fixed, or not fixed, if they never healed it, it can transfer. It can transfer on. So how to challenge this? Oh, look at this. Look for the gray areas. Ask yourself, is there a middle ground I'm not seeing? Remember that most situations involve nuance rather than absolutes. So, I mean, is there really a perfect solution to anything? No. We always think there's a perfect solution, and then, you try it out and you're like, oh, but it worked, but not the way I wanted to. But hey, I mean, how many discoveries have been made by somebody's making a mistake, thinking, oh my God, I failed, but oh, wait, no, look, it works for something else. So to me, that's a gray area. I mean, it's a bit vague, but it's a gray area. Instead of looking at everything as being so black and white, we should try to find that gray area. I mean, it's like with, I don't know. I feel like look at artists, right? I don't know why, but like Monet and Van Gogh are just hitting my brain really hard. Even Jackson Pollock, but sorry, I'm laughing because I said Jackson Pollock and I just remembered a line from Guardians of the Galaxy. Not going to repeat that one, but anyways, but if you look at their paintings, we nowadays, 100+ years later, like, wow, look at their, this is beautiful. This is amazing. Look at how their minds worked. But look at Van Gogh when he was alive. He could, he was lucky if he sold 1 or 2 paintings, or even was able to trade them for something else because nobody saw the beauty in it. There was such a, with Da Vinci and Rembrandt and all those other people who were very distinct in their styles. And this is just my opinion, okay? Because I am no way an art expert, but just from what I see, it's like, you expect like, I don't know, like the perfect portrait or the perfect, painting or the perfect background. And, like with watercolors are just beautiful because they kind of just flow into one another, and that's one of the reasons I love Monet. And it was just, it kind of speaks to you because it's, I don't know, that's just me again. But then like with Van Gogh, right? You just sit there and you go, we look and we see the beauty now. And we see, and I think there's a bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on with my brain today. I did not sleep well last night and I had some wild dreams. So, but, um, but I mean, I think there's a little more empathy that goes with Van Gogh sometimes if you know his story and you know how much he struggled mentally. So, it's just, so then to be able to see someone paint all these beautiful things while struggling with their own mental health, it, I think it just kind of makes it a little bit more kind of prominent in your way of thinking, going, wow. But, the way we look at things is, it's either super perfect or not perfect at all. The gray area is where we need to be. The gray area is, that in between of all or nothing thinking. So again, look for the gray areas. Ask yourself, is there a middle ground I'm not seeing? Remember that most situations involve nuance rather than absolutes. Overgeneralization, the distortion, taking one negative experience and applying it broadly to unrelated situations, using words like always, never, or every time frequently signals this distortion. I can hear older sibling going, you do that? I do. I'm an always, never, every time person. And I'm getting better at that. I am, because I realize that it's like, no, it's not always. We don't always do that, and we don't never do that. And, it's not every time. But I think when you're hurting or you're angry, the next time, okay, and I hate to say this, but the next time you have an argument or you hear someone having an argument, see if you can figure out how many times they say always, never, and every time. Because that's usually where I hear it, is always, never, ever, every time, is when someone is upset or someone is in an argument. You always do this, or you never do this, or, every time I have to do this. And, and this is my voice, because I think I just did this not too long ago, like a couple days ago. So I tend to overgeneralize as well. And apparently this is something I need to work on. So, again, when it comes to the perspective, that's exactly what this is. This is my perspective. So for anybody new that might be saying, boy, you sure share a lot about yourself, or you sure have a lot of opinions about this, I'm trying to be relatable, because that's what helped me heal. Other people being honest about their situations, other people not being afraid to point out where I was falling short to help me get better. Not to put me down, but to say, hey, have you ever thought about blah, blah, blah? I mean, I thought that, being diagnosed with a mental illness like MDD, major depressive disorder, was the end of the world. I mean, come on, watch yesterday's show. I giggled my way through that. Not that I should have, but I think part of it was, I don't know what was wrong with me yesterday. I think, just feeling a little enlightened really kind of just went boom, so, but yeah, so I do try to be relatable, and I do, want to share my perspective on this, because I know that it's going to help other people heal, or it's going to help people who know people that have gone through trauma, move through it, but move through it in a gentle way, not like an in your face kind of way. So the challenge of how to challenge it: test your generalizations against evidence. Is it really always or never? Or can you find counter examples? Replace absolute statements with more accurate ones. So see, overgeneralization kind of seems like it goes with all or nothing thinking, right? Always and never. And every time. So, challenge it. Replace absolute statements with more accurate ones. Instead of saying, well, you never do this, blah, blah, blah. Just say, I tend to be the one that has to do this more often, and I could use your help. So, it's just things like that. So, be careful with your words, because always, never, and every time are definitely absolute statements, and they're probably very untrue. And if they're not untrue and they are true, you will have those counterexamples to prove it. So, that doesn't mean keep score, okay? It just means just choose your words better. I guess in a way, always, never, and every time, they're kind of fighting words, right? They're like, let's go at it. So yeah, but so find your counterexamples, okay? Number 3, mental filtering. The distortion, focusing exclusively on negative details while filtering out all positive aspects of a situation. How to challenge it. Intentionally identify positive elements for each negative aspect you notice. Challenge yourself to find at least 2 positive ones. So the interesting thing is, I'm going to use the situation I'm in now. A lot of people tend to focus on the negative aspect of my situation right now of being here and helping my dad. And it might, I have to remind them I'm playing the long game. When you know somebody as well as a parent, and even then, I'm not even sure we really come close to knowing. Like, I don't think all parents come close to knowing their children as adults, because we can be so not withdrawn, but just so busy. We don't talk about a lot of things. Like my mom, for instance, when she passed away, I was talking about this last night at happy hour with my cousins. I was like, when she passed away, I had no idea how many groups she had belonged to. She belonged to like the town just down the road. Well, it's all part of the city, but just this little area. She belonged to their American Filipino group. She belonged to the Filipino Women's Club. She belonged to a church club. And all these people showed up at her funeral, and I was just like, and they're introducing me or themselves to me, and I was just like, oh my goodness. It's like, I had no idea. I knew she was busy. She was more busy in retirement than she was when she was alive, or when she was working. And it's just kind of like, wow. But we don't always know, okay? And this is where, and that's more of an example of how we look at things. But in my situation, you have to play the long game. And it can, a lot of people may have a tendency to remove the positive aspect of it, as in, trying to get somebody better and back on their feet, and, just knowing that it doesn't happen like that. And it does affect a lot of people outside, but also what a lot of people don't understand is that there's been a lot of mental growth for me while I've been here, because I have had downtime. I have, had the time where, I'm not just planting myself in front of a TV, which I do because I was spiraling hard. And it's very, what if this happened? I do believe everything happens for a reason. And what if this happened to snap me out of it and remind me, hey, who I am on the inside and what I came here to do? Not just here, this house, but to, into this life. What is my purpose? Why am I here? And so, there's so many more positive aspects to it than the negative aspects. And I try to remind myself of that when I get a little overwhelmed. I miss home. I miss my cat. I miss my cats, but I miss my girl. I miss my little baby girl, my little fur ball, and I do miss older siblings. So, but I do realize that this has been really a catalyst for me. And it's reminded me that there's so much more in life than just, waiting for it to happen. It's about creating it. It's about making it happen. And so this is nothing, I'm not purposely trying to rake anyone over the coals. I'm not purposely trying to debate or even, dismiss other people's feelings. It's just, I realized, in thinking over the last month that everything happens for a reason. And it's like, so what is the reason? And I noticed that this is going to sound strange, but and look, a crow just landed, and that's one of my signs. But I do notice the more I progress, the more he progresses. And I don't think he realizes it. And I'm not saying I'm the one that's keeping him this way, but it's interesting how his, the other day, it's kind of like, I had a big enlightenment thing, and then he's just sitting here having his own enlightenment moment going, you know what, I really got to figure out what I got to do to get better and blah, blah, blah. And it was good to hear that. So I do believe that spiritually everything is connected. And so when we have these mental filterings, You have to ask yourself, why are all these negative thoughts just continually bombarding me? Why are all of the, why is there an absence of positivity? Now, I'm not saying go out there and be a toxic positive person, because toxic positivity is a real thing. And maybe I'll do a refresher show on that one, because I did that a while ago. But now there's two crows in the tree. I'm sorry, they're so distracting. I'm really protective of this bee that's on my screen, because I feel like they're just eyeballing him, wanting to eat him. It's like, no, don't eat him. So we need the bees. But anyways, so yeah, I'm not trying to dismiss anyone's feelings, because I do realize that, that when you're in situations like these, it can be very complicated. But we have to ask ourselves, where is the positive aspect? So if you're going through something, if you're healing, or maybe you've had a trauma and you said, you know what, I'm fine. I don't need anyone's help. I don't need you to tell me this. I don't need you to tell me that. I'm good. And yet they're negative about everything. Just watching TV. Maybe they're yelling at the TV going, oh, that's stupid. That is so dumb. Why are people like this? Or watching sports going, oh, they suck. And, they're a bunch of losers and blah, 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 and yada, yada, yada. And it's because there's something in us that is hurting. And so we're transferring it. I mean, yeah, you might get mad at your sports teams, but come on, every single time, nobody's perfect. But, I mean, even I have my limits, though. It's kind of like, no, I'm done. This is not going to turn out well. So I guess focusing exclusively on negative details while filtering out all the positive aspects of a situation is, to me, a really big sign of someone in pain, someone hurting, not necessarily physical pain, but emotional pain. So we have to learn how to move through that, and we have to figure out how to find the positives in every situation, even the most negative of situations. It can be hard. Grief you might be saying, well, where's the positivity in grief? I don't know, because I still struggle with my own grief over the people I've lost, over the things I've lost. And again, grief isn't just about death. It's about losing something that was a part of you. So, and having to deal with how to heal. And maybe that's the whole part about grief, is it teaches us how to heal ourselves and how to move forward with the knowledge that we have, but also in the direction that, maybe we know now that we need to go in. This is not the direction I ever thought I would go in. But after my mom died, I tailspinned so hard, I was like a plane hitting the ground. Sorry, bad analogy, but that's how it felt. Like I just crashed and burned. And there was, I literally felt dead inside. And then Sissy Joe passed, and it was just, that felt like the nail in my coffin. And yet, 10 and 11 years later, it's kind of like, this is not the person I ever thought I would, uncover under all that muck and healing and trauma and all that stuff. But I like her. So let's work on the mental filtering, okay? Discounting the positive. The distortion, dismissing positive experiences by insisting they don't count for various reasons. How to challenge it. Practice accepting compliments and acknowledging achievements without minimizing them. Ask yourself how you would respond if a friend shared the same positive experience. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but Sibling and I, sorry Sibling, I'm calling you out on this. Sibling and I struggle with discounting the positive. I was talking the other day, and about how, I say this a lot, about how Sibling was really kind of the catalyst in my healing journey, even before my mom and Sissy Joe passed away. And, Sissy Joe, Sibling, and I were like the Three Musketeers. We were like our own little girl gang. So we were all like, we were all sisters. We were all soul sisters. So, I know how hard that affected her too. And she was very, an older sibling was also very close to my mom. Now, for those getting confused, older sibling is my best friend. She's been my best friend for the last 26 years. But somewhere along the way, we became like soul sisters. And, and I can't imagine my life without her in it. Just like Muddy. Can't imagine my life without her in it. Known her for about 20 some odd years now. But, older sibling knew the signs. And so now a lot, I really kind of attribute a bit of my success in my trauma healing to her, for she played the long game. She really played the long game, because I was resistant. But she always sits there and says to me, I think you are, oh God, what does she always say? I just had it in my head too. Oh, she's all, I think you're giving me more credit than I deserve. And I'm all like, excuse me? No. I think a lot of times, we and this can be a generational thing too. And humility is a beautiful thing. Humility is a beautiful thing. But I don't think that we should, there are times when people will say, oh, thanks for acknowledging that. And someone else might sit there and go, well, that's kind of, all egotistical of you. No, it's not. If you have an accomplishment, be proud of it. We shouldn't have to minimize our accomplishments to make other people feel better. I mean, when my cousin graduated from college years ago, it was a long time ago, I was very proud of her, and I couldn't really directly think of anyone in my immediate family that I hang out with all the time that had. I dropped out, but she went the distance. She even changed her major, after her first year, but she went the distance. And, I was proud of her. But, and you sit there and you go, hey, you know what? I'm really proud of you for, just having that go get 'em attitude and doing it. But a lot of people will sit there and say, well, I can't believe, because I could have had that chance, but I didn't have that chance in life, and blah, 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 but they do other things. And so when you compliment on the other things, they're suddenly comparing themselves to somebody who's done something that they wish they had done. If you wished you had done it, go do it. Okay? You're not dead. I could go back to school and graduate from college. But I hate school. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Believe it or not, I love to learn. I love to research. But my brain just, it's very disorganized sometimes. And sometimes sitting through a class is not that easy. Although Sibling and I did take a couple of classes together and they were fun. Or one class. And I've taken other classes. But even older sibling, when she graduated from her certificate course, I was like, she's all, well, it's just a certificate course. It's like, no, it's not. You were a college graduate. Okay, this university had a certificate course. You were a college graduate. And other people may say no, but hey, it's a skill. All a certification class is just an accelerated college course. And it's college, and you graduate. So there you go. Yeah, Sammy says the same thing. Love learning, hate school. Yeah, that's me. I mean, there are classes that, I loved. Sometimes I loved my psychology class. I loved I probably shouldn't have loved the CSI class because that was pretty grim. But I loved the learning and to learn a lot about, what goes into solving, in law enforcement, to solving crimes. And, there were some things that were a bit much for me in that. We did have a coroner come in one time and I couldn't even look at the pictures that she had. One of them, she flashed so fast because she didn't want to traumatize us. But that was probably the hardest day. That and when we had a gang squad lieutenant or sergeant come in and he just flipping this knife, and I'm just like, if you let that go, it's going to hit my head. So it's kind of like, But anyways, sorry, sidetracking. Don't discount the positive. Okay, if somebody compliments you, take the compliment. I admit I struggle with taking compliments, but when I give a compliment, I never give a compliment I don't mean. So if I'm complimenting you, I absolutely 100% mean it. And there are times when people will sit there and go, well, they'll hem and haw about it. I'm like, you know what? Just take the compliment. Just take the compliment. You know, and I feel kind of like a hypocrite when I say that because, again, I am not good at taking the compliment. I do try, and I'm getting better at it. But, you know, I think that's a self-love and a self-worth thing. And it's also a humility thing. We're taught to be, I think, a little too humble. And, you know, like I said, humility is a beautiful thing. You know, being humble is a beautiful thing. But there's also probably, let's just name it, toxic humility. Okay, where it's like, no, it's okay. I didn't do anything. And take your credit where credit is due. I'm alive because people cared enough to, you know, to kind of just poke the bear. That's exactly how I'm going to put it. They were brave enough to poke the bear, and they lived, and I am grateful that I did too. So, one last time, practice accepting compliments and acknowledging achievements without minimizing them. Ask yourself how you would respond if a friend shared the same positive experience. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes sibling and I'll go through this, and I'm like, well, what would you do? You know, what would you tell me to do? And she's like, shut up. So it's just, you know, take the compliments. All right, guys. So jumping to conclusions, the distortion, making negative interpretations without supporting evidence. This includes mind reading. Remember, we talked about mind reading yesterday, assuming others' thoughts, and fortune telling, predicting negative outcomes. So we did talk about these yesterday. And just as a reminder, this comes from Karma Gaia, and this is the exact same article that I got yesterday's thing out of. So, you know, they're just telling you how to move through these things. So again, making negative interpretations without supporting evidence. This includes mind reading, assuming others' thoughts, and fortune telling, predicting negative outcomes. So how do you challenge it? Identify when you're making assumptions and seek evidence. Ask what facts actually support this conclusion. Consider alternative interpretations. So I think a lot of us have a tendency to jump to conclusions, you know, or say you're already bristling over something and, you know, and somebody else enters the conversation just like, oh, well, of course you're going to take their side. I mean, this person may literally be listening to this conversation and about to, you know, inject their thoughts that might actually, you know, be in support of you. But the first thing you're thinking is the world is against me. Everyone's on that person's side. And that's absolutely not true. Sometimes it might feel that way. Like, you know, if you're a kid and you have parents, but it's their job to discipline you in the good way. All right. So, but, you know, I mean, there were times in our household when I was growing up where, like when my mom was going through menopause and then she had a thyroid issue. And, you know, I don't know if they ran into each other, but they sure seemed like they did. But when she was menopausing, she was crazy. One minute she's one way, the next minute she's the other. And I remember one day she was, you know, don't do that. Don't worry about this. You know, I'm trying to do this right now. So just go do whatever you need to do. You can do it later when you come home from school. And then I come back out. Well, why isn't this done? And it's like, wow, Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde, where'd you come from? And then my dad heard us arguing and he comes out and he actually, and you know, the first thing I said is I'm like, oh, he's like, what's going on here? And I'm like, well, I know you're going to take mom's side, but, and he actually took my side because he's like, well, did you tell her? You know, and he's basically saying, did you tell her you're in menopause? You know, I mean, come on, I was in biology. I took career and family studies. I took sex education. I know all this stuff. Oh God, I had sex education in 5th grade, for God's sakes. I know that was weird. But yeah, so, you know, I jumped to a conclusion, and my mom and I were really good at jumping to conclusions when it came to both of us. We could sometimes knock heads when I was growing up. When I hit about 20, all of a sudden our relationship changed. You know, I moved out for a while, and when I came back, it was a completely different relationship. But my mom did have a tendency to jump to conclusions from time to time. I think all of us do. You know I do. Especially when we're not in our minds, right? You know, like sometimes we just feel like we're outside of our body. And when we feel like we're outside of our body, I think sometimes we just, you know, we have these distortions that the world is against us. And a lot of times when it comes to trauma, it can feel that way. Like you feel like you're completely alone in the world and nobody understands a damn thing. So, you're just automatically going to jump to every conclusion because it's kind of, to me, in my opinion, a wall that we put up. It's that brick wall that we put up to protect ourselves. So if we jump to conclusions, we're not going to be hurt if that person takes that person's side because we already know it's coming when we don't. So just, to challenge it, again, identify when you're making assumptions and seek evidence for those assumptions. Ask what facts actually support this conclusion. Consider alternative interpretations. So number 6, magnification and minimization. The distortion, exaggerating the importance of negative events or shortcomings while downplaying positive events or strengths. Challenge it. Use the perspective check technique. Use the perspective check technique. Ask yourself, how important will this seem in a week, a month, or a year? This helps restore proportion. I'm really sorry. I do not know what's wrong with me today. I mean, I feel like yesterday and today are like night and day, but I'm just mentally today, my brain is just firing in 2,000 directions. But yeah, so, okay, exaggerating the importance of negative events or shortcomings while downplaying positive events or strengths. I don't know. I'm not really sure how to cover this one. But again, challenge this by saying, use the perspective check technique. Ask yourself, how important will this seem in a week, a month, or a year? This helps restore proportion. I think if, say you're having a tiff with somebody and it's over something completely ridiculous, and you're just kind of like, again, you're having one of those out of body experiences and you're just losing your mind and everything just feels magnified. And then you start minimizing the positive things that are going on around you. You start minimizing all the good things that may have come out of a situation because you're just so focused, like hyper focused on the negative stuff and just magnifying it in your head. Just stop, take a breath, and just, breathe. Ask yourself, will this be important, even in an hour? But as it says here, a week, a month, or a year. But I mean, even like half a day from now, like this afternoon, will it even matter this afternoon? When you, and this to me, sometimes people can take things personally, right? Like it just feels like everyone's out to get you and they're not. So again, exaggerating the importance of negative events or shortcomings while downplaying positive events or strengths. So yeah, I'm really struggling with this one. I really am struggling with this one today. So if anybody has any ideas on that, but I read it. So just again, like I said, if something feels like it's just completely distorted, just ask yourself, again, count to 10, count backwards to 1, whichever you want to do. And then ask yourself when you can breathe again, how important is this really? Is it going to matter tomorrow? Probably not. So number 7, emotional reasoning, the distortion, taking emotions as evidence of truth. I feel anxious, so the situation must be dangerous. Challenging it. Oh, there you go. Bestie just said the answer 99% of the time is it won't matter. And it usually doesn't, right? How many of us have been in an argument with somebody and then, we just kind of feel stupid after? I feel stupid after pretty much any argument I have with somebody. It's kind of like, why did that even need to happen? It's like, I swear we could have just handled it so much better. Like, maybe I should have, I have a tendency now, if I feel like the situation is escalating, that I will walk away. But I don't just walk away. Some people walk away and that pisses people off more. I just sit there and said, I'm going to walk away now because if I don't, I'm either going to say something I don't mean or this is going to get worse. So I probably don't need to give the explanation, but I do so that people, kind of come back into themselves, which is kind of too, I'm not trying to magnify or minimize that situation. I'm trying to just put a period on the sentence because sometimes it's what we need to do. But yeah, Troy's right. 99% of the time it won't matter, and it won't matter later. You can't change what has already happened. We just have to learn how to move forward from it. So, and one of the ways that we can do this is by by using the perspective check. Will it matter a week from now, a month from now, a year from now? How will I deal with it if it is a big event a month from now, a week from now, a year from now, even in, 4 hours from now? So how much of a difference will it actually make? So again, emotional reasoning, the distortion, taking emotions as evidence of truth. I feel anxious, so the situation must be dangerous. Challenge it. Remind yourself that feelings, while valid, aren't always accurate reflections of reality. Look for objective evidence beyond your emotional state. So yeah, first of all, Bestie, thank you for that one. And Muddy says, I've done that, walked away and told people that that if I don't, I might say something that I will regret. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times it might piss them off or make them mad, but I'm like, no, I didn't say we had to end this discussion. I said, but it's like, I know me, and I know how I can be sometimes. And there's still a part of me that isn't sure that I won't, fight back the way I used to when I was, in a trauma brain, when I was still struggling and, just everything was distorted in my mind. So I know for me, I have to walk away because I don't want to say something I don't mean. I don't want to say something I will regret that I absolutely do not mean. Or maybe I mean, and I'm just saying it to be hurtful. So because when people are hurting, they will have a tendency to hit below the belt. And, there are situations that I've been in where I think people, just come at you and they try to hit below the belt because they've got nothing left. But at this point, it's not even about who's right or wrong. It's just about wanting to feel like you're right, and they're wrong. So, which is another distortion. But, and it's not about winning. Nobody wins in an argument. Even if you think you've won in an argument, you don't win because everybody's angry, right? If it's a fight, not an argument, a fight. But if, come back later, have a discussion, say, look, okay, I'm sorry I had to walk away, but it's like I needed to get back in my head. So, So Troy says, maybe I'm saying something to be mean. That is a statement of growth. Oh, thanks. I guess I think you're talking about me and what I just said. I'm a little outside of my head today, so some of the stuff coming out of my mouth, I'm not exactly just retaining. But yeah, I mean, I do. For the fact that I choose to walk away now is, to me, a huge step of growth in the right direction. But anyways, when we become emotional, it can cause damage. It can be damaging because a lot of times we're speaking more from our emotions, not from our heart, not from any facts, not from any reality. Sometimes we're just angry. And sometimes we may lash out at people that don't even deserve it. It's just a matter of, well, I'm angry, so I'm going to yell at something, and you might just happen to be in front of my face when it happens. And so, if you didn't duck, guess what? You're getting hit with the negative bomb. So, I think when it comes to emotional reasoning, this is really where coming in and taking a breath is going to help you. And I think that's also where magnification and minimization comes in. Will it matter in a week, a month, or a year? What you're getting mad at now, how destructive can this be to whatever you are reacting to? I mean, if you lose somebody and then you start pushing everybody away, will that matter in a week, a month, or a year? Yeah, it might. When you're hurting or you're not feeling well, will it matter in a week, a month, or a year? Yeah, it might. Because I know people that if you say no to them enough times, they stop asking. They don't take into consideration what you might be going through. They're just automatically assuming that, you should feel better. You should go out for them. You should do this. You should do that. And that's not how it works. So, we really need to kind of get back in our heads and get back in our hearts and out of our, I should say we should get back into our hearts and out of our heads. Because sometimes the emotion just overwhelms us so much that it's just kind of like, pow, or like on the completely opposite spectrum, right? This example is, I feel anxious, so the situation must be dangerous. In a completely different, random one, someone might pay attention to you and all of a sudden you think they're in love with you. And it's just kind of like, oh. And you either might be like, ooh, or you might be like, oh. So there's a lot of different emotional reasonings where we really have to just kind of stop and check ourselves. So number 8, should statements. Using rigid, often unrealistic expectations with words like should, must, or ought. Challenge it. Replace should with more flexible language. Instead of I should always be productive, try I aim to be productive when I can, but rest is also important. So, I get this. It's like, well, I should be doing this today and I should be doing that today. I don't know if, as a person with a dinged up mental health, this is something I struggle with. And I'm sure other people who don't have a dinged up mental health also struggle with this. Like, well, I should do this, but I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and you're like, well, I should have done it yesterday because now I really don't want to do it. And then you kind of just, are just angry that you have to do it now, but I try to remind people because I've done this. This is what I think is in the pursuit of perfection. It's like, well, I need to do this. I should have done this. And then we shame ourselves. And I am a big, big fan of trying to help people not shame themselves because I have spent years shaming myself. Why didn't I, stay in college? Why didn't I do this? Why did I did that? I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have said that. If I had not said this, I might still be here. And, but again, as unpopular as it can sometimes be, everything happens for a reason, whether we like it or not. And the should statements are just saying, you know what? Maybe your body is telling you that you've been going at 2,000% for so long that you just need a break. And don't shame yourself if you didn't, oh, I should have cleaned my bathtub yesterday while I was cleaning the rest of the house. But, and this is me, right? So I cleaned some of the house yesterday and I thought I should do my bathroom today. But instead I chose to eat lunch and then go to the pool to work on my tan. So, and then today I'm just kind of like, yeah, I really don't feel like doing it today. Now, a year ago, it would have been, oh God, and then I would just overwhelm myself because that's what would happen. I would just lose complete train of thought. And then I would just plunk myself down either in bed or on my chair and just, play games on my phone and watch TV because I would just completely overwhelm myself. Now it's just kind of like, no, I needed the rest. I needed to float around in a pool yesterday and, it's still there. It'll get done. I should probably not say it'll get done. I should have more of a set schedule, but sometimes the schedules overwhelm me as well. So, and it's not as bad anymore. I'm learning to just kind of go in stride, organize myself a little bit better, and do these things. But it's like, but I look at it and I go like, okay, well, I'll probably do it after my show today. Whereas, again, a year ago, I would have been overwhelmed going, so just try to replace your should, your musts, and your ought tos with, not shaming yourself. Get it done. If you have to, write it down and say, I'm going to do it today, or I'm going to do it tomorrow. And if you have to, set a time for it. I'm going to do it when I come home from work, or I'm going to get up half an hour earlier and I'm going to do it before I go to work. Or if if you're retired or you don't work or you have other situations that keep you at home, just say, okay, you know what, at this time today, I'm going to do this and then it'll be done. And it is now officially in your planner, on your phone, in paper, whatever. I still use an actual physical planner, but it'll be done. And, and you'll have that sense of achievement and you'll have that sense of accomplishment. And don't minimize that. Don't sit there and say, well, I'm glad it's done, but I should have done it yesterday. You say, no, look at me. I did it. I'm done. It's good. Okay. I have 5,000 loads of laundry to do, but it's done. So the next one, labeling. Attaching a negative label to yourself or others based on specific behaviors. I made a mistake, so I'm a failure. Challenge it. Separate behaviors from identity. Remind yourself that actions don't define a person's entire worth. Use specific behavior-focused descriptions instead of labels. Now, labels like I made a mistake, so I'm a failure. That could be a very negative situation that someone might be growing up in, where there's control and perfectionism expected at every turn. And, I talked about this a little bit earlier. That could be somebody else's trauma brain. And this is what they talk about when they say breaking the generational cycle. That, there are certain people who just, they just carry on the generational trauma, and it's just that trauma is just waiting for somebody to just come in and say, no, this has got to end. And I know people have done this. I know that there are people, I'm lucky in my particular situation because, the only person trying to make me perfect was me, but that was my own trauma brain. That was not a generational trauma. That was a personal one. So, but because my parents would always say, it's like, well, why are you like this? It's like, we taught you how to be confident. We taught you how to feel good about yourself. We taught you how to, look in the mirror and go, hey, yeah, I like you. But, but you struggle with it, right? So my mom, it's like, my mom caught me one time saying I'm ugly. And she's like, I don't make ugly babies. She legit said, I do not make ugly babies. So I was just like, I did not know she heard me. So I didn't know what else to say. But when we say I made a mistake, so I'm a failure, no. I talked about this yesterday. Mistakes are like test runs. It's just learning how not to do it a certain way, right? I mean, it's like that quote. I just learned how not to do it like 500,000 other ways. So, and then yesterday we decided during the show that mistakes are test runs. That's all they are. They're just test runs, right? One of my favorite quotes was from Ernest Hemingway. The first draft of anything is shit. Now, as a person who loves to write stories, I can't tell you how many papers I used to rip through before laptops or personal computers became a thing for other, for regular households. I used to go through notebook after notebook after notebook. One of the other reasons why I love pens. If I was on chapter 2 and I didn't like how chapter 2 was going, I would rip out chapter 1 as well. So let's just say I kept the paper industry in business. I did recycle, so thank you very much. But that's how it felt. I made a mistake. I'm a failure. And, I really want to help people move past that because everything we do is a test run in life. Life is like a test run, right? I mean, we're not perfect. We're perfectly imperfect humans, and we, excuse me, we are perfectly imperfect humans, and we just move forward the way we think we're supposed to move forward. And if there's something that you want to change it. But allow people to be there to support you. Okay? You are not a failure. If someone's sitting there telling you you're a failure, then maybe you should just turn around and, well, no, don't do this. But the first thing that ran in my head is, yeah, well, what did you fail at that you just keep projecting onto me? Don't do that. That might turn out bad. But you can say it in your head. What is this person going through that, are they projecting onto me? And just walk away. Find a new way to do it. Try out another test run, okay? But don't minimize your importance, and don't, try not to shame yourself if something didn't work out, and, just keep moving forward. And the last one, personalization and blame. The distortion, taking excessive responsibility for external events or conversely blaming others while denying your own role. Accountability. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Accountability. Lots of people don't like to take accountability, and I think that can be kind of a trauma brain too, in a way. It's because it makes you feel like you're a failure, right? It makes you feel like, that I did this wrong. I have had to do the biggest about face when it comes to accountability, because there was a lot of non-accountability on my part. I was that person that would blame others while denying my own role, because I didn't want to feel like a failure. I didn't want to feel like, there was just one more thing I was bad at, right? And test runs, and so accountability is one of the biggest things we can ever take. It's a bit humbling. But once we learn how to do that, we also learn how to not continually make the same mistake over and over and over again. So again, challenging it. Identify all factors contributing to a situation, not just your actions or someone else's. Recognize the complexity of most situations and the limits of individual control. So Sammy says most people don't take accountability. It is hard work. It is hard work. It is hard work. No matter, even if you become good at taking accountability, it is still hard. It's hard because, I think there's a bit of shame that might be involved, a little bit of embarrassment that might be involved. Maybe we're so trauma brained from something else that, we're afraid to be wrong because that's how we felt our whole lives. No one's going to be mad at you for being wrong. No one's going to be mad at you for taking accountability. And if they are mad at you for taking accountability, they have their own issues. Okay. And that's not your problem. Your issues need to be about you and how you grow, how you heal yourself, no matter what has happened to you. And if nothing has happened to you in life that's been bad, that has caused some kind of trauma brain, but you still struggle with accountability, maybe you got bullied when you were a kid. And now maybe you're in this position where you feel like you don't have to take accountability, but we all have to take accountability. That is one of the biggest life lessons that I think we all trip and fall on our face when it comes to learning, is accountability. And accountability is rough, but it's doable. It's doable. Trust me, if I can be accountable for my own actions, you can be accountable for your own actions. It's hard, but it is doable. All right. So moving forward, challenging cognitive distortions takes practice and persistence. Consider keeping a thought journal to track distorted thinking patterns and your efforts to challenge them. Over time, you'll develop a more balanced, realistic perspective that can significantly improve your emotional well-being. Remember that occasional cognitive distortions are normal and human. The goal isn't to eliminate them entirely, but to recognize them quickly and respond with more balanced thinking. With practice, challenging these thought patterns becomes more automatic, leading to improved mental health and more fulfilling relationships. It really is. A lot of these things are, they fuel communication. And communication is the biggest part in any relationship, whether it's romantic, friendship, or family relationship, or coworker relationship. Communication is always key. And when we're not jumping to conclusions or labeling situations or magnifying and minimizing or mental filtering what we think or all or nothing thinking, we can actually communicate better. So, I like how this closed it up with the moving forward part. We're human. We're going to make mistakes, okay? We're going to have a lot of test runs in life. And instead of shaming yourself or making yourself feel bad about it, just say, okay, I learned how not to do it, or I learned not to say this, or I learned not to do this. Every relationship with people is different. Okay, so what you may be able to say to this person over here, you cannot say to someone over here. Like the term calm down, I cannot tell you how much that pisses me off when people tell me, just calm down. There's only one person in this entire world that can tell me to calm down. And I don't argue, I just kind of breathe. And that's older sibling. When other people tell me to calm down, whether it's my dad or anybody else, it's like, you did not just tell me to do that. But there's something about the way older sibling says it that it's just kind of like, calm down. And she doesn't normally say that anyway. She just tell me, just breathe. And I tend to huff first. I let out a huff first, and then she'll be like, don't huff me, just breathe. So when you have I'm human. We all have our quirks. We all have our things. But when we move through it and we move past it, we're going to be okay. When we learn how to identify these cognitive distortions, when we learn how to heal whatever it is inside of us that needs to be healed, or whatever situation we're in at the moment that needs to be healed, and worked through, then we'll challenge it, and we'll come back into our bodies and stop having an out of body experience where we're just outside our mind. So anyways, I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for hanging in there. Older sibling, Muddy, Bestie, thank you guys for coming on, and for your input as well. I do apologize that my brain has been all over the place this morning. I don't know what's happening. But I don't know, maybe I'll just go suck down some caffeine today. Maybe if I make it maybe if I wire myself up, I'll just fall asleep and wake up human again. So anyways, again, I will not be on tomorrow. And I will not be on Friday. Friday is a holiday here in the United States, 4th of July. So happy 4th of July to everybody. Please party responsibly. Have your designated drivers. Be safe out there. Don't make bad decisions. And yeah, and I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next Monday on the 7th, I think. Yeah, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Time, Facebook Live. All lives are public under Shelly Marie Lucas, and you can find me across the social media board. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much. Oh, Sammy, thank you, Muddy. I love you too. So have a great day, everybody, and I will see you next Monday.